So finally we have some problems with hyperbolas. Number 35 gives us information about the hyperbola, and they want to know the equation and to create a graph. So let's go ahead and plot what we have so far. Focus 0, -8. So the focus is a little bit like a parabola. The focus is inside one side of the hyperbola. And the vertex 0, 3. Of course, there are two vertices. Obviously, with both of these being on the y-axis, we're going to have a up and down hyperbola, and the center is at 0, 0. So it's lots we learned from this. First of all, let's write down the equation of a up or down hyperbola. So that's where the y squared is going to be over the positive term, which we call a squared. And the x squared term is over the b squared. So the distance a is the distance from the center to the vertice. So that's going to be 3. Now, the distance from the center to the focus, which we'll probably need to know eventually, we call that c. And that's going to be 8. Since the center is 0, 0, we can start now working on this equation. Since we know a, this will be 9. And since we know, let me check my notes and make sure I don't mess up. And since we know that, well, we need to know b to get b squared. We have a and c. Now for an hyperbola, we have this relationship, c squared equals a squared plus b squared. If I subtract a squared from both sides. So if I know a and c, this gives me way, to find b. If c is 8, you square it, that's 64. And if a is 3, you square that. Looks like b squared is 56. So that should be the equation. Oh, sorry. That's why I have my notes. 55. So if we want to finish the graph, so if I went up 3 to this vertex, I have to go down 3 to this vertex. And from side to side, I'm going to move the distance b, which is actually b will now be square root of 55. Just to get an idea how far that is, I'll grab my calculator. Square root of 55 is 7.4. So from the center, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe here. So then, you draw the rectangle, do your asymptotes through the corners and the center, and since this is I should have wrote it here, So you don't forget up or down. And it's going to go like this. And there's the graph. Now the next hyperbola problem is they give us an equation of a hyperbola. Then they ask a bunch of questions. They want to know what the center is. The transverse axis, in other words, is the transverse axis parallel to the x to the y axis? What are the vertices? What are the foci? Asymptotes, and then to make the graph. All right, so lots going on here. The standard equation, since the x is positive, this is going to be a left or right hyperbola. Standard equation is x minus h quantity squared over a squared minus y minus k quantity squared over b squared equals 1. Obviously the center looks like h and k are 0. So we're at the origin. We can start now trying to graph this. Since it's a left or right ellipse, obviously the transverse axis is going to be parallel to the x-axis. Now we know a squared is 49, so a is 7. B squared is 36, so b is 6. So actually, with this information, I can actually go ahead and I can graph this hyperbola. I get the vertices from the graph with the asymptotes. Foci, we'll probably have to do a calculation. So since this is a left or right, from the center I'm going to move to the right 7, to the left 7. So that's actually going to be one of the vertices. So it looks like, and then I move to the left 7. So they're actually the two vertices. Now I move up 6 and down 6. Now I can draw my rectangle through these 4 points, and then I can draw my asymptotes. It's going to sketch this parabola, and then we can figure the rest of the stuff out. So since it's a left or right, see, if I didn't look up here, I was almost getting ready to do this, but it's a left or right. Now the asymptote's pretty straightforward because the center's at the origin. The equation for this asymptote is just going to be, it's going to be a positive slope. It's going to be rise over run. We go up 6 and over 7. And the equation for this asymptote, now we go up 6 and a negative 7. So those are the equations of the asymptotes. And then the last thing are the foci, and we have to do that mathematically. So once again, for hyperbola, the equation for the foci is c squared equals a squared plus b squared. C is the distance from the center to the foci. So I need to determine that. Well, a squared is 49. B squared is 36. 70. 85. If I didn't mess up on my math. So the distance C is actually going to be square root of 85. And if I look, square root of 85 is a little greater than 9, probably. Like 9.2. So here, this was 7, 8, 9. So maybe the foci are... So what are those actual points? Well, it's going to be from here to here is square root of 85 to the value of x 0. And then here it's going to be negative square root of 85, 0. So those are the foci. All right, lots of stuff going on here. And the last problem. They're going to give us the graph of an hyperbola and ask us to figure out the equations. Let's try and zoom in so we can hopefully see enough to figure out what we need. So I think we'll have to look at this graph and figure some things out. So obviously it's an up or down hyperbola, so later on I'll write the standard equation for an up or down hyperbola. But the key things are going to be the center, obviously it's 0, 0. These are the vertices. What I really care about is the distance. Now if I look at my scale, I think each tick mark is like 2. So here's a vertice. I think it's 2, 4, 5. So that distance is A. So I believe A is going to be 5. And this other direction, that distance is going to be B. So 2, 4, 5. I think A and B are actually both 5. And if I know the center and I know A and B, then I have what I need to come up with the equation. So let me write down the standard equation for a up or down hyperbola. So that's where the y is the positive term. Y minus k quantity squared over a squared minus x minus h quantity squared over b squared. So h and k are 0, and a and b are both 5. So I believe that should be the equation of that hyperbola. And I will check to confirm that that is in fact correct.